I made a video not too long ago discussing my thoughts on a certain story that was never produced for Star Wars The Clone Wars. Following the show's cancellation and Disney's takeover in 2012, this bounty hunter story was never finished. With more recent Star Wars content, I find it funny how 10 years later we are referencing these missing episodes. This chapter has since become all the more integral when looking at two iconic bounty hunters, Boba Fett and Cad Bane. In this video, we will be looking at two Disney Plus original shows that have used elements of lore that were supposed to be introduced in this cancelled story. The shows in question are The Bad Batch, a successor to the Clone Wars following Clone Force 99 in the aftermath of Order 66, and of course, The Book of Boba Fett. To bring you up to speed, actor Daniel Logan, who played the young Boba Fett in the prequels, went on to voice the character in the Clone Wars from Season 2 onwards. He gave a phenomenal performance, revealing years later he had completed voiceover for the story arc in question. He also performed a small role in the cancelled Dark Disciples story, later turned into a novel which we will cover in a separate video. Throughout these 4 episodes, we would have seen a teenage Boba mentored by Cad Bane, who was in his prime as arguably the best bounty hunter in the galaxy. Together, they were tasked with saving a kidnapped child from a camp of Tusken Raiders on the planet Tatooine. How this would have played out is unknown, but we can try and piece together a story from the bits of unfinished content shown several years later. Looking at the Book of Boba Fett, this show helped to further our understanding of the Sand People tribes and how they differ. This was also heavily explored in The Mandalorian, where both shows managed to humanize these characters. I really like this approach, which is better than portraying them all as just straight up savage killers.
I hate them!
In this Clone Wars story, we are led to believe the Sand People are hostile and a threat to the bounty hunters. We do not know for certain, but the Sand People are apparently responsible for kidnapping a child who is being held at their base camp. There are several pieces of leaked concept art showing what the Sand People would have looked like in the Clone Wars art style. I also really like the design done for their camp, which seems reminiscent of the Tatooine level shown in Knights of the Old Republic. Boba allows himself to get captured so he can infiltrate their base in order to complete the mission. Cad Bane was eager to mentor Boba with the hidden agenda of creating an opponent just as capable as Jango Fett. Supposedly, Bane had always wondered if he could challenge and win a fight against Jango. His goal was to beat the best and, therefore in his mind, become the best bounty hunter in the galaxy. With Jango having been killed at the hands of Mace Windu, an easily influenced clone was the next best thing. The history of their partnership became all the more important thanks to some dialogue raised in the Book of Boba Fett season finale. Throughout the show, we see Boba become unexpectedly close with a tribe of Sand People. He essentially becomes one of their group by earning a place amongst them. This, however, turns to tragedy where Boba discovers the tribe has since been murdered. In an effort to anger him, Bane is cruel enough to mention this event and belittle what they represent to Boba.
I will not abandon them.
Like the Tuskens.
What's interesting, however, is his response.
Don't toy with me. I'm not a little boy any longer.
I would argue this is a reference to the unfinished story and that there is perhaps more to Boba's appreciation of the Tusken Raiders that we are yet to see. With this story supposedly being detached from anything relating to the Clone War, I feel these 4 episodes could eventually be shown as a one-off special. Originally, these episodes were intended to be part of Season 5, according to the production codes 5.22 through to 5.25. With the show winding down at this time with rumours of cancellation, I suspect this was the reason why the 5th season was only 20 episodes long. Capitalizing on the success of the revival, The Bad Batch has shown just how popular the Clone Wars medium of storytelling is. I would argue the demand for more is a huge positive and that more Clone Wars style stories could still happen. The duel between Boba Fett and Cad Bane is one of my personal favourite deleted scenes, which was fully voiced by both Daniel Logan and Corey Burton. With the other bounty hunters seemingly turning against Boba, he is given the opportunity to face Bane one-on-one. Paying homage homage to your typical Western shootout, Boba draws his blasters and successfully injures Cad Bane. This was also the origin for the iconic dent in Boba's helmet. From what we are led to believe based on pure speculation, this was supposed to be Cad Bane's poetic demise at the hands of his bounty hunting apprentice. By killing Bane in this duel, he would then go on to assert himself as the best in the galaxy. This of course is now no longer relevant thanks to Bane's unexpected appearance in episode 8 of The Bad Batch. One aspect of these unfinished stories that appears debatable is whether or not these events actually happened in the canonical view of the franchise. I would argue these stories did happen regardless of whether the animation is finished or not. This is only further reinforced and expanded upon in the Bad Batch episode Reunion. On the planet Bracca, Crosshair launches an assault on Clone Force 99 who make their desperate escape. Protecting the child clone Omega, Hunter discovers the remains of several clone troopers. It is then revealed Cad Bane was responsible for killing them, who is seen to be alive and well. This was one of my favourite reveals from the show, making use of previously unseen content from the Clone Wars. Giving Bane a new outfit and a brand new ship known as the Justifier, this was his first appearance following his last seen episodes in Season 4. Thanks to this episode, it was debated whether or not the unfinished duel had actually happened or not. If Bane was meant to die, how does this explain that he is now alive following the events of Order 66? Found in some behind-the-scenes content, an image outlining Cad Bane's character design gave an interesting update to the model. Located beneath his hat, he has a cybernetic plate covering the side of his head. Sadly, nothing further is known about this upgrade other than he obviously survived his duel with Boba. I also really appreciate how Todo 360 was brought back into the show. Voiced by Seth Green, he delivers on a humble but comedic droid character. I always kind of found him to be disposable, but he makes for a fun dynamic opposing Bane in their unique work-based relationship. I really hope we see more of these characters in animation, but this is where we jump to Bane's live-action debut. Seen in the Book of Boba Fett penultimate episode, From the Desert Comes a Stranger, sees Cad Bane making an appropriately Western-inspired entrance. I really appreciate the costume design where he reverts back to a similar outfit from his days during the Clone Wars. He makes a lasting impression which clearly means more to those who are familiar with the animated world of Star Wars. For those unfamiliar, this would be their introduction to the character who clearly poses an immediate threat to Boba. Although I personally found this episode underwhelming, I really liked the visual aesthetics and the attention to detail. Boba and Bane's gunfight was entertaining but short-lived. Gunned down unexpectedly, Boba struggles to continue fighting only to knock Bane to the ground. Seeing the cybernetic plate on his head was a neat touch where both characters mirror one another. I really like how this permanent injury reflects on what happened to Boba's helmet all those years ago, and although their paths may not have crossed often on screen, both hunters are left with permanent reminders of one another. Teaching Boba one final lesson, this abruptly changes where he is stabbed in the chest by a gaffi stick. Although the demise is poetic justice for what happened to the Sand People, I felt the final fight between these characters was weak and over far too quickly. With Bane having such a lengthy history across the franchise, it's disappointing to see him killed with a lack of Western influence. But this raises the question, did he actually die in this scene? I'd be very surprised if Bane was brought into live action just to be killed off after 2 episodes. Where the camera shot eerily zooms into Bane's supposedly lifeless body, there is a device on his chest with a blinking red light. I'd like to think this hints at him surviving and that this device could be some form of beacon reaching out for immediate medical attention. Who could be the one to save him? None other than his loyal techno service droid Todo 360.
You're in trouble now.
That's going to wrap up my thoughts on this unfinished Clone Wars story being referenced. I hope you enjoyed. Fingers crossed something more comes from this in the near future. Otherwise, I feel it's wasted potential to heavily reference these episodes without producing the episodes themselves. To my knowledge, most of the content is still available, needing the animation to be finalized. I'd imagine the story may need tweaking slightly to fit into the updated canon, but this would be minimal beyond a confirmed death for Cad Bane. Like with any of the unfinished episodes, will they ever be released? Only time will tell. Let me know what you think about these episodes eventually being released in the comments, and for more videos be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, DVD Review Studios.
Are you threatening me?